The numbers swam before me, projections from Oracle, not against the inside of my eyelids, thank God for small mercies, but on the transparent surface of my data pad. Atmospheric composition: 78.08% nitrogen, 20.95% oxygen, 0.93% argon, trace elements mirroring Earth's composition to an astonishing, frankly absurd, degree of accuracy. 98.97%. I ran the comparison again, a futile gesture, a digital tick I'd developed over years of sifting through datasets, searching for the signal in the noise. The result remained stubbornly consistent, statistically insignificant deviation. My entire career, my life's work, hinged on the statistically significant, finding the outliers, the anomalies, the whispers of alien life in the vast cosmic silence. And now, presented with the most significant anomaly imaginable, I was desperately seeking insignificance. A glitch in the probe's sensors, a calibration error, a cosmic ray burst, anything to explain away the data. Ethel, named with a touch of agency irony, after the Old English word for noble. A noble gas, argon, made up a similar percentage of its atmosphere as ours. Coincidence? Or were the simulations right? Were we the puppet show? My fingers, still encased in the thin tactile gloves of my flight suit, tapped a rhythm on the edge of the datapad. I was supposed to be resting, conserving energy for the landing, but sleep was a distant, unattainable luxury. The Destiny was on final approach, decelerating smoothly, its FTL drive now dormant. We were relying on good old-fashioned chemical rockets for the descent, a humbling reminder that even at the edge of known space, some principles remained stubbornly constant. I scrolled through the probe data again. The spectral analysis of Ethel's star, older than Sol by a significant margin, at least 1 billion years. That alone should have rendered the planetary similarity impossible. 1 billion years of divergent stellar evolution, 1 billion years of potential cataclysms, asteroid impacts, atmospheric shifts. The chances of 2 planets, orbiting stars of such differing ages, developing along such precisely parallel lines were infinitesimal. Less than infinitesimal. 0. And yet, there it was. A second Earth. I recalled the initial briefing, back at agency headquarters. The presentation filled with glossy renders of a vibrant Earth-like world. The excited chatter of the mission planners, the handshakes, the forced optimism. I remembered my own cautious skepticism, buried beneath layers of professional obligation. I'd pointed out the anomalies, the glitches in the probe data, the almost unnatural dampening of electromagnetic radiation across a wide spectrum, the strange, almost spectrally identical uniformity of the plant life signatures, the complete absence of any detectable radio signals. My concerns were dismissed. "Sensor limitations, Dr. Croft," the lead project manager, Dr. Macmillan, had said, his smile fixed and unyielding. "We're talking about data gathered from light years away. Some degree of interpretation is required." Interpretation. A euphemism for wishful thinking. He was, as a man, not bad, simply overly ambitious. A condition I knew affected most in our section. I'd seen it before, this hunger for a breakthrough, this desperate need to find anything to justify the colossal expenditure of resources that interstellar exploration demanded. I'd even felt it myself, in my younger, more naive days, before the Kepler 186f debacle, before the GJ 1132b false positive, before the string of dead ends and disappointments that had eroded my youthful enthusiasm, leaving behind a residue of pragmatic pessimism. Failures were always dressed in euphemisms. I glanced up at the main viewport. Ethel was no longer a distant point of light, but a swirling blue and green marble filling the screen. Beautiful, in a way that felt fundamentally wrong, like a perfectly rendered CGI image, too flawless to be real. It felt like looking into a broken mirror. "Oracle," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy. "Rerun atmospheric analysis, focusing on trace element discrepancies. Cross-reference with probe data, iterations alpha through gamma. Acknowledged, Dr. Croft, Oracle's voice replied, a calm, measured baritone that emanated from the ship's comm system. Analysis in progress. No significant deviations detected beyond established parameters. Established parameters, I muttered. Parameters based on a single flawed dataset. We were building our house on sand, our logic on a foundation of wishful thinking. I knew that they were playing God, that we were not discovering. The image of the geometric precision of the city plans, retrieved by the probe's final low-orbit pass, floated unbidden into my mind. Colossal structures of black, obsidian-like stone, arranged in patterns that defied any known architectural or cultural precedent. No windows, no doors, only vast, open archways leading into darkness, built on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever created. Who was it built for? And when? The probe's geological analysis, limited as it was, had indicated that the stone was ancient, incredibly so, millions, perhaps even billions of years old. And yet, there was no sign of erosion, no degradation, no evidence of the passage of time. The cities were pristine, abandoned, yet untouched. Dr. Croft, Oracle's voice interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Final approach trajectory confirmed, initiating landing sequence in T-5 minutes. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to regain a semblance of composure. Acknowledged, Oracle. Relay pre-landing checklist to all crew stations. Ensure environmental suits are sealed and operational. My focus returned to Ethel, now looming large and terrifyingly close beneath the Destiny. The designated landing zone, a vast, flat plain adjacent to the largest of the Black Cities, was rapidly approaching. My earlier apprehension began to transition. I needed facts, data, anything to give me a direction. Stand by for touchdown, I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within. But my mind, it had already begun the next level of assessment. The touchdown was uneventful. A slight shudder, a muted groan of metal settling onto alien soil, and then stillness. Not silence, stillness. A profound absence of the expected sounds of a new world. No wind whistling past the hull, no chirps or cries of unseen creatures, no rustling of unfamiliar foliage. Just the internal thrum of the Destiny's systems, a counterpoint to the quiet outside. Report, I said, my voice crisp and professional, masking the knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I unbuckled my harness and stood, feeling the slight shift in gravity. All systems nominal, Dr. Croft, came Baker's voice from the engineering bay. Reactor stable, life support optimal. Walker, report. Exterior secure, Doctor, no movement. Optimal, secure. Words designed to reassure, to impose order on the unknown. But they felt inadequate against the backdrop of this unsettling serenity. I activated my helmet's external comms. Initiate environmental scan, full spectrum analysis, check for biological signatures, atmospheric toxins, radiation levels, anything out of the ordinary. Though, I thought, what constituted ordinary on a planet that defied all statistical probability? The crew busied themselves with preparations inside the Destiny. Crew members checked equipment and ran diagnostics, readying themselves for our first foray onto Ethel's surface. I watched them, my eyes lingering on each individual. Baker, the stoic engineer. Lopez, the geologist, his eyes already alight with scientific curiosity. And Walker, the security officer, his hand resting on the reassuring bulk of his sidearm. Dr. Croft! Oracle's voice cut through the comm chatter. Exterior scan complete. Atmospheric composition consistent with pre-landing analysis. No airborne toxins detected. Radiation levels negligible. Trace element analysis reveals unusual concentrations of iridium and osmium, localized around the city structures. Iridium, osmium, elements associated with asteroid impacts. Biological signatures? I asked, holding my breath. Negative, Dr. Croft. No detectable biological activity within sensor range. Negative. a confirmation of the unsettling stillness. A planet teeming with plant life, yet devoid of any detectable animal life. Another paradox. I donned my own helmet. The world outside, viewed through the visor's filtered lens, was stark. The plain was a uniform expanse of reddish-brown soil, stretching to the horizon where it met the base of the colossal black city. The sky above was a pale, washed-out blue, devoid of clouds. The light from Ethel's star was different, not weaker but diffused, lacking the sharp, defined shadows of Earth's sun. It felt like observing a negative picture. "All right," I said, my voice amplified by the helmet's speakers. "Two-man teams. Lopez, you're with me. Baker, you stay with the ship. Monitor systems. Walker, perimeter security. Standard exploration protocols. No unnecessary risks. Report any anomalies immediately." We exited the Destiny via the access ramp, our boots crunching on the alien soil. It was granular, almost like finely ground glass, but yielding underfoot. I resisted the urge to collect a sample. That would come later. My priority was reconnaissance, observation, gathering data to refute the growing dread in my gut. The city. It was even more imposing up close. The black stone was perfectly smooth, reflecting the diffused sunlight in a way that was disorienting, creating the illusion of shifting surfaces. The scale was inhuman, the archways towering hundreds of feet above us, their edges sharp. There was no sign of weathering, no cracks, no imperfections. It was as if the city had been built yesterday. We moved cautiously towards the nearest archway. Lopez, a handheld spectroscopic analyzer held loosely at his side, was muttering to himself, analyzing the composition of the ground, the angle of the sunlight, the lack of wind. We reached the archway and I paused, peering into the darkness beyond. It wasn't absolute darkness, but a deep, velvety gloom, as if the stone itself were absorbing the light. I activated my helmet's integrated lamp, the beam cutting through the gloom, revealing nothing. Just more black stone, more smooth, unyielding surfaces. Then Lopez gasped. "Doctor, look!" He was pointing to the wall just inside the archway. I followed his eyesight, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a mural. Carved into the black stone with exquisite detail were figures, humanoid figures. But not just any humanoid figures. They were wearing flight suits, identical to ours, carrying equipment, identical to ours, standing next to a vessel. That was a perfect, scaled-down replica of the Destiny. I moved closer. The figures were us. I could see Baker, his distinctive stoop perfectly rendered in stone. Lopez, his hand on his handheld spectroscopic analyzer, frozen in a gesture I'd seen him make 1,000 times. Walker, his sidearm drawn, and then I saw myself. My own face carved in the unforgiving stone, staring back at me with an expression of apprehension. A mirror image, not in a reflective surface, but in ancient alien art. An echo in stone. "Impossible," I whispered. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation. Optical illusion? Mass hallucination? Some bizarre form of alien mimicry? But the detail, the precision, it was too perfect, too specific. This wasn't a random pattern, a vague resemblance. This was a deliberate depiction, a record of us, of our arrival. I reached out almost involuntarily, tracing the contours of my stone likeness. The surface was smooth, utterly devoid of any texture beyond the carved details. It felt final, like a tombstone. Lopez, run a full spectral analysis, dating, composition, anything. I needed data, concrete facts, to push back against the rising tide of unreason. This was a scientific expedition, not a descent into superstitious dread. Lopez, visibly shaken but maintaining a semblance of professional composure, activated his analyzer. The device emitted a series of beeps and whirs, projecting a thin beam of light onto the mural. He moved it methodically across the surface. "Preliminary readings, Doctor, this is the same material as the city structure. obsidian-like, and the age, it's consistent with the probe's initial estimates. Millions of years old, at least. Millions of years. Long before humanity had even climbed down from the trees, let alone built spaceships. The logical part of my brain, the part that clung to the scientific method, was screaming. It was impossible. And yet, there it was. "Walker!" I called, my voice echoing slightly within the archway. "Report! Status of the perimeter. I've got movement. Multiple individuals approaching your position. Slow, non-threatening so far." Non-threatening, a subjective assessment, based on human standards of behavior. And everything about this place screamed non-human. My heart rate, displayed on my helmet's HUD, spiked. "Describe them." A pause. Humanoid, tall and slender, pale, almost translucent skin, large dark eyes, no facial features beyond that. No visible mouths or noses, they're just watching. I turned, slowly, to face the archway, my helmet lamp illuminating the approaching figures. There were 5 of them, moving with fluid, almost gliding motion. Walker's description was accurate. Humanoid, but distorted. Taller than any human I'd ever seen, their limbs elongated, their bodies unnaturally thin. Their skin was a pale, almost luminous grey. They wore simple, seamless robes of a dark, unidentifiable material. They made no sound, no footsteps, no rustling of fabric, no breathing. I raised my hand, palm open, in what I hoped was a universal gesture of peace. A futile gesture, perhaps, but protocol dictated an attempt at communication. "Greetings," I said, my voice amplified by the helmet speakers. "We are explorers from Earth. We come in peace." No response. The watchers simply stood there, their black eyes fixed on us, unblinking, unreadable. I tried again, speaking slowly, clearly. "Do you understand me? Can you communicate?" Nothing. I switched to mathematical sequences, projecting a simple prime number sequence onto my datapad and holding it up for them to see. A fundamental concept. A universal language, I hoped. Still nothing. "Oracle," I said, my voice losing its forced calmness. "Any attempt at communication on their part? Electromagnetic fluctuations? Subtle variations in anything?" "Negative, Dr. Croft," Oracle replied. "No detectable communication attempts. No unusual energy signatures. They are simply observing." Simply observing. Like specimens in a lab. Or like prey. I felt a growing sense of claustrophobia, despite the vast open space around us. We were trapped, not by physical barriers, but by this impenetrable silence, this utter lack of communication. We were outsiders, intruders, in a place that knew us, that had anticipated our arrival, yet remained utterly indifferent to our presence. I scanned the surrounding walls, searching for more murals, more clues. Further into the archway, set apart from the depictions of our arrival, was another mural. Larger, more intricate, dominated by a single central figure. A figure that was unmistakably human, but different. Taller, more imposing, radiating an aura of power. And around this figure, a series of geometric patterns, complex, interwoven. I felt a pull, a magnetic force. "This way!" I directed my team toward the larger mural. I had to see it. The larger mural was overwhelming in its detail. It wasn't just a depiction. It felt like a record, a chronicle. The central figure, the tall, imposing human, stood at the apex of a swirling vortex of geometric patterns. These weren't random designs, they were structured, conveying information. I knew it, instinctively. This was their language, not spoken, not written in any way we understood, but encoded, visually encoded. "Lopez, focus your analyzer on these patterns. Full spectrum. Look for repeating sequences, mathematical relationships, anything." I knew I was grasping at straws, relying on terrestrial concepts of language and mathematics to decipher something profoundly alien. I activated my own datapad, recording a high-resolution image of the mural. "Oracle, assist Lopez. Cross-reference the patterns with our database of known languages, mathematical constants, astronomical cycles, everything. Acknowledged, Dr. Croft, Oracle replied. Analysis in progress. Preliminary findings indicate high degree of geometric complexity. No direct matches with known linguistic structures. However, there are recurring patterns. Symmetries, fractal geometries. Fractal geometries. A mathematical concept describing self-similar patterns that repeat at different scales. A common feature in nature, but also in data compression. Could this be a compressed form of information, a visual language designed to convey vast amounts of data in a limited space? Progress was agonizingly slow. Lopez's analyzer beeped and whirred, its beam of light tracing the patterns. Oracle's voice, usually calm and measured, now carried a hint of urgency. Dr. Croft, I am detecting a correlation, a repeating sequence within the fractal geometries. It corresponds loosely to temporal markers, cycles of Ethel's star, orbital periods of its moons, precessional cycles, temporal markers, a timeline. This wasn't just a record, it was a history, or a prophecy. My heart sank. I had a chilling premonition of what I was about to uncover. Oracle, isolate the temporal markers. Construct a chronological sequence. Extrapolate as far as possible. It was like assembling a jigsaw puzzle from another dimension. Fragments of information gleaned from the geometric patterns began to coalesce. A sequence of events unfolding over vast stretches of time. The early sections were vague, abstract, depicting the rise and fall of a civilization, the civilization of the Watchers, presumably. But then, the imagery became more specific, more familiar. I saw depictions of the destiny, rendered with chilling accuracy. Our arrival, our exploration of the city, our interactions with the Watchers. And then, the images became darker, more ominous. I saw fire, explosions, figures collapsing, our figures dying. The pieces of the puzzle, though abstract, began to point to a sequence of events that was chillingly recognizable and far too close for comfort. It depicted a specific event, one concerning the destiny. Specifically, the ship's reactor and a catastrophic, complete failure. It would not be long, the mural confirmed. We would die here. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No. There has to be another interpretation, a misinterpretation, a loophole. I was grasping at straws, clinging to the remnants of my scientific objectivity. But the evidence was mounting, the prophecy unfolding before my eyes, in stone. The internal conflict was becoming unbearable. My rational mind, trained in logic and reason, was battling against the undeniable evidence of predestination. A predetermined future carved in stone millennia before our arrival. It was a concept that violated every principle of causality, every tenet of scientific understanding. Baker, I barked into the comm. Initiate a full diagnostic of the Destiny's reactor. I want every system, every component analyzed. I want redundancy checks, stress tests, everything. And I want it done fast. Copy that, Doctor, Baker's voice replied. Running diagnostics now. But everything was nominal on touchdown. Nominal, I muttered. Nominal according to our standards, our understanding. But we were operating in a context that defied all known parameters. I turned back to the mural, my eyes tracing the sequence of events leading to the depicted catastrophe. It was precise, uncannily precise. It showed the initial malfunction, a minor fluctuation in the energy flow, then a series of cascading failures spreading through the reactor core like a virus. And finally, the breach. The crew, initially skeptical of my growing unease, were now beginning to share my fear. Lopez, his analyzer still clutched in his hand, was staring at the mural with horror and fascination. Walker, I called. Come here, I need you. On my way, Doctor, Walker's voice replied, punctuated by the sound of his boots crunching on the alien soil. Perimeter still secure, the individuals, they haven't moved, just watching. Their silence, their passivity, was more menacing than any overt threat. It spoke of a knowledge, a certainty that we lacked. Doctor, I'm picking up something. Baker's voice strained, cut through the comm. Minor fluctuations in the primary energy regulation matrix. It's within acceptable tolerances, but it's fluctuating. The prophecy, it was unfolding, exactly as depicted. My mind raced, desperately searching for a solution, a way out. We could try to shut down the reactor, but the mural, it showed that too. A failed attempt to shut down the reactor, resulting in an even more rapid and catastrophic failure. We could try to evacuate, abandon the ship, but the mural, it showed that too. We were trapped in a pre-written script, a cosmic play with a predetermined ending. I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of despair. My scientific mind, my training, my entire worldview, it was crumbling around me. The universe, I had always believed, was governed by laws, by cause and effect, by logic and reason. But this was madness, a predetermined future etched in stone, a cosmic trap sprung millennia ago. Walker arrived. "Doctor, you need to see this," he said, holding out his data pad. The data from Baker, it matches the patterns on the mural. The sequence of failures, it's identical. He'd been cross-referencing the reactor data with a scan of the prophecy mural, searching for any deviation, any discrepancy. He'd found none. "Doctor," Baker confirmed, his voice now laced with a clear note of alarm. "The rate is increasing, outside of established parameters. I am attempting corrective measures, but..." His voice trailed off. "Dr. Croft, please." It was Walker, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "If what we have learned today is the truth, if we have no free will, if this planet is a divine judgment, as I believe, you must find peace. You must accept what's next." I looked at him, at the earnest plea in his eyes. I looked back at the mural, at the inescapable script of our doom, and then I looked back into the archway, back towards the entrance, finding a hollow space growing within myself. A surrender, not to fear, not to despair, but to the inevitability of it all. I took a step back, away from the mural, away from the impending catastrophe. Behind me, Lopez muttered calculations, as if whispering them might change their meaning. Walker was silent, hand still resting on his sidearm, though he must have known by now that a weapon would do nothing against fate. The watchers did not move. They stood in the same formation, their featureless faces reflecting the dim, diffused light of Ethel's star. Their black, depthless eyes remained fixed on us, not with malice nor pity, just observation. They had known we would come. They had known we would fail. And still, they had done nothing. "Doctor," Baker's voice came through my comm. "You need to get back. The reactor is in rapid cascade failure. I can't stabilize it." I turned from the mural. "How bad?" A pause. "Beyond containment parameters. The failsafe locks aren't responding." There was no need to check the calculations. I already knew. Walker's voice was steady, detached. "So what do we do, Doctor?" I had spent my life unraveling mysteries, solving equations that others deemed impossible. I had dedicated my existence to logic, to reason, to the unshakable belief that the universe was governed by laws, not prophecy, not fate, not inevitability. And yet I had seen this moment before, not in a vision, not in some abstract foreboding, but in stone. We had already played our roles. We ran across the alien soil toward the destiny. Baker was already at the ramp, his hands working furiously over his tablet, trying to override a system that had already written its own ending. "Oracle," I snapped. "Reactor status. Core instability, catastrophic failure, projected in..." The ship shook. A violent tremor ran through the floor beneath us. Inside, warning klaxons howled like the last screams of something already dying. Baker's hands hovered over the emergency shutdown controls. "We need to try a forced kill switch. If we can..." I already knew what would happen. The mural had depicted this moment too. The attempt to stop it, the inevitable failure, the escalation. But I still found myself saying, do it. Baker engaged the override. A moment of silence, then error, override, failure. The reactor surged, power levels spiking uncontrollably. The ship trembled like something in its death throes. On the console, red indicators blinked out one by one, not stabilizing, but shutting down completely. I realized with a sick certainty that the Destiny itself was dying before we did. Walker's voice cut through the rising chaos. "Dr. Croft." I turned. He wasn't looking at the failing reactor. He wasn't looking at the terminal. He was looking at the viewport. The watchers remained in place, silent, still. But one of them, just one, had turned their head ever so slightly. Not much, barely a shift at all. A final acknowledgement. They had seen this before, too. Baker's voice broke into static. "Containment breach!" Walker exhaled, his hands still gripping the emergency panel, but making no move to activate it. He wasn't even trying anymore. "Dr. Croft," he said, voice quiet, "do you believe in fate?" I thought of the mural. I thought of the watchers, of their ceaseless, passive observation. I thought of the universe, its patterns, its laws, its perfect mathematical order. I thought of every decision I had ever made, of the arrogance of human science, of the illusion of control we had always clung to. And I realized, with a clarity colder than the void between galaxies, it was never a prophecy. It was a record. It had already happened. The ship's final alarm blared, a sound that barely registered as the firestorm of the reactor breach ignited. I looked back to the watchers one last time. They turned away. And then time ended.